I felt another slight buzz in my bracelet, which I assumed meant Junip was encasing us in the dampening field. "Do you think you can just silence us?" I asked incredulously, but my own voice produced a dull echo like I was talking with a bucket over my head.
"If I have accomplished nothing else in my career," Junip said, "I will be content with the knowledge that I have, at the very least, silenced Ezekiel Reynolds for a time."
The guards then opened the double doors and we walked out to face a crowd of perhaps 100 data collectors. Lights shone in our faces, recording drones hovered above us, while various data collectors held up their data bracelets or recording devices or exposed their image-capturing tattoos. Most of them were beings I didn't know, but a few of them I recognized from my hearing the previous year. And front and center was Hlu, whom I had contacted directly with my report about the destruction of the kind disposition and the shuttle log data. It would have been overstating the matter to say Hlu and I were friends. She didn't do friendship, exactly, but we had a history, and while it had started out with the two of us at odds, she'd later helped us a great deal in figuring out who had manipulated our presence on the station, and why. I had to admit, I was happy to see her blank expression as she stared up at me. Hers was the closest thing to a friendly face that I was going to find in the room. Junip raised up a hairy arm, and the room began to quiet. Recording devices continued to hum, but soon nobody spoke.
"There have been rumors circulated on the news outputs," Junip began, "and I would like to address them as best I can. Though I will tell you directly, we believe the leaked data to be, at best, incomplete, at worst, a forgery. Here, however, is what we know. The Confederation starship, Kind Disposition, has been destroyed, with all hands, including my beloved nephew Nutjob. It grieves me to confirm the rumors that Director Glee-Wixix was also on that ship. She perished, along with Captain Hyai and his crew."
Junip paused here.
"In accordance with our laws, I will fill the role of interim director until the next election cycle."
What followed was a long list of Glee-Wixix's accomplishments, and Junip recounting personal anecdotes that mostly served to show how much Glee-Wixix had admired and respected Junip, and how happy she would be that her position was being filled by someone so competent and just all around amazingly wonderful.
"As more information becomes available, we shall pass it along," Junip said. Unfortunately, there is not much we know and a great deal of misinformation to sort through. It certainly does not aid our inquiry that the only witnesses to this disaster very likely caused it."
"The director's schedule listed her as vacationing on her homeworld this past week," one of the data collectors called out. "Now we learn she was traveling to Earth. What can you tell us about why she chose to make a personal visit to the unaligned world, and why the trip was kept secret?"
"Right now, I can tell you very little," Junip said. "There are some indications that the director was in the region to negotiate a new and lasting peace accord with the Phatic Empire, but I have yet to see the relevant documentation." I was pretty sure that was a lie, but I guessed it was an explanation that Junip liked better than that the leader of the Confederation had decided to pay my planet a visit because she needed me. "Why is Ezekiel Reynolds here on Confederation Central?" asked another data collector. "If Director Glee-Wixix went to Earth, then we must presume she chose to bring him and the other Earth beings with her." "Again," Junip said, "the director's intentions are not clear. I can tell you that the existing ship's logs indicate the presence of a stowaway on board. It is likely that all of these humans were stowaways, but again their role in the destruction of the Kind Disposition is yet to be determined, and it is premature to conclude that they deliberately destroyed the ship." "As you know," another data collector said, "our Constitution requires an interim director to stand before procedural committee within 10 days in order to have the position confirmed. No doubt that committee will request a formal inquiry into the destruction of the Kind Disposition. Are you at all uneasy about what they will discover?" "I am uneasy that one of our ships has been destroyed. I have lost a friend, and I have lost a nephew. I mourn for the many beings I did not personally know. While the facts of this case may be disturbing, I certainly wish them to be revealed.
Another data collector stepped forward. There are rumors that you personally oversaw the staffing of the kind disposition, favoring heavily beings who belong to your movement for peace. Could the ship being manned by an unskilled crew have played a role in its destruction?
It's hardly my movement, Junip said, putting a hairy hand to his chest. Though I certainly understand its apprehension about the influence of primitive species in our society. As for the personnel change, such shifts are normal and entirely within standard practice.
Ezekiel Reynolds, one of the data collectors shouted. What do you have to say for yourself? Have you destroyed yet another ship?
Junip held up a cautioning hand.
I have advised these aliens not to speak to any data collectors until more veritable facts become available. It is for their own protection, so they don't incriminate themselves. You understand. Please respect that. Obviously, this is a delicate issue. Some have called Ezekiel Reynolds a heinous villain. Others have pronounced him a hapless bumbler. I believe the truth lies somewhere between these two extremes.
Always the moderate, I thought.
Regardless of his past mistakes, in desecrations, humiliations, and crimes,
Junip continued,
I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that his actions have played some small role in the recent peace that we have come to enjoy within our society. More importantly, his home planet was the site of the turning point in a long and disagreeable ideological conflict with the Phatic Empire, a conflict that, after many decades, has come to a conclusion. Because the bounty of peace has grown within the soil of his burdens, I believe we must not condemn him without first possessing all the facts.
I know you don't much care for this Junip thing, Smelly said, but I am coming to respect it. It is quite cunning for a primitive pouch of biological ooze.
Then why don't you move into his brain? I said, trying not to move my lips. I didn't want to look like a crazy person in front of the entire Confederation. I'd have to settle for looking like a murderous stowaway instead.
Yes, I think this Junip is a superior example of its kind, and like all superior beings, its true greatness will only show when it is tested. That is why I have overridden your dampening field. You may speak if you wish.
I felt a grin start to spread across my face, but I realized Junip was speaking, linking my alleged actions with the destruction of the kind disposition. And anyone watching me, a category that almost certainly would include billions, would think I was pleased with myself, so I killed the grin.
Surely Ezekiel Reynolds would like to defend himself against such allegations,
one of the data collectors shouted when Junip finished his latest rant.
Again, Junip said, I have advised them not to speak. It is my concern that they cannot defend themselves without lying, and it can do us no good to have more untruths circulating.
Halou now shouldered her way forward.
Ezekiel Reynolds contacted me directly, she announced, and claimed that there was a mutiny.
There's no evidence to support that rumor,
Junip interrupted.
I understand that it is being alleged that the entire crew conspired against the director, and as my nephew is part of that crew, I take this accusation as a personal insult to my family's honor. I also wish to emphasize that we cannot yet confirm some rumors of some sort of primitive bomb, such as might have been manufactured on Ezekiel Reynolds' homeworld aboard the kind disposition.
The sabotage, I shouted, was in manning the ship with an untrained crew whose purpose was to take control away from Captain Hyai. Junip stared at me, the whites of his eyes suddenly pink. Everything about his expression implied he wanted me to shut up, but I'd had enough of being quiet for one day. I knew I was probably digging myself in deeper, but it was hard to overestimate my satisfaction from seeing that look of shock on his goaty face. Nyana Jawad, I said, and then paused, giving them time to hear her name, to really hear it. Urch, I continued. They were my friends. I can't claim friendship with either Captain Hyai or Director Gleewixix because I didn't know them long or well enough, but I liked and admired both of them. These were good and honorable beings, and I will tell you right now that they were murdered when... That was as far as I got. I'd seen it from the corner of my eye, and some part of my brain was quietly urging caution. But I was too focused on what I wanted to say, so I ignored the looming shadow. It was the narrow-bodied peace officer I'd seen before, or at least a member of the same species. If it was the same being, he'd changed out of his uniform and was now wearing something that hugged his body, making it seem even more slight. The bulkiest thing about him was the PPB pistol pointed directly at me. Before I could react, another shadow crossed my vision. It was large and shelled and shaggy. Junip hurled himself forward, pushing me to the ground just as the would-be assassin fired his pistol. The energy blast missed us entirely and instead slammed against the wall. Bricks exploded in dust and small chunks, but it was clear to me no one was hurt. I turned back to the attacker, but he was already fleeing, twisting easily into the crowds and between bodies. The peace officers who lumbered after him had to get individual beings to move, so they really had no chance. Meanwhile, Junip was pushing himself off me. I didn't know how to read goat turtle expressions in general, but I knew he was incredibly pleased with himself. By the time I got to my feet, he was already trying to calm the crowd.
"I am unharmed," he announced. "Is anyone injured? Does anyone require medical intervention?"
It seemed no one had been hurt, and that was good. Junip raised up a hand and said that under the circumstances there would be no more statements for the day. The room was now a crime scene, and he asked the peace officers to escort the data collectors from the premises. The news conference was over, and it had ended with Junip demonstrating his willingness to risk his life for someone he had every reason to dislike, and who had probably killed his nephew. Junip had just made himself a hero. A group of peace officers led us back to the secure room and locked us inside. At first, we were too shaken up and surprised to speak, but it was Colonel Rage who broke the ice.
"This Junip plays a deep game,"
he said. I nodded. Then the attempt on your life was false? Charles asked.
Of course it was, Alice said. He arranged for a fake assassin so he could save Zeke's life. That way it makes him look like a hero and no one doubts that he really wants to do the right thing.
Looks like you're up on Confederation politics, Misan said. Pretty good for someone who's never been here before and knows nothing about this place. Alice shrugged.
It just seemed obvious.
"Let's all keep calm," Colonel Rage said. I know we're an incredible distance from our home, and we've been branded as criminals by a corrupt and power-hungry politician who hates Zeke and is not shy about committing murder, but... He trailed off, which wasn't a good sign. "What's our play?" the colonel asked me. Why is that for me to decide? I sputtered. I thought you were in command. "I'll advise you as best I can," Colonel Rage said, "but I may be out of my depth. You know this culture better than I do, and it seems that whatever is going on, you're at the center of it." Again, Misan said with a sigh. Fine, I snapped, and began to think. I have allies in the Confederation, but I'm not sure that they're in positions to help us. The only beings we can count on are the data collectors and reporters. Hulu and her colleagues know our side of the story, and they're not stupid. Junip won't be able to do anything too drastic with the whole Confederation watching. So for now, we bide our time. Until? Misan asked. I don't know. We're going to have to make things up as we go along, I said. The hidden fortress, Smelly said. That's your plan. Glee Wixix wanted you to go there, and clearly Junip does not. As near as I can tell, that means you need to go. I had no idea if Smelly was right or not, but it always felt satisfying to do what Junip didn't want me to do, even if it got me into deeper trouble. Besides, everyone was demanding I come up with a plan, and that was as good as any. I think I know what we need to do, I said. That, however, was as far as I got before the door opened and Junip walked in. He did not close the door behind him, but 2 peace officers stood guard, their backs to us. Nicely played, I said to him. Is that how you thank me for saving your life after one of the countless billions who hate you decided to act on reasonable emotions? He folded his arm and gave me, I suppose, the goat turtle equivalent of a smirk. Cut the ball, the colonel barked at him.
I want to know what you plan to do with these children.
These children,
Junip said with a sneer,
have accused me of murder and treason, which means that they can't go anywhere until the truth of what happened on the kind disposition is resolved, to the public's satisfaction, and to my own.
Any truth that satisfies you, the colonel said, will also have to exonerate you of any wrongdoing, which means you'll need to pin the blame elsewhere. Junip held out his furry hands in a gesture of surrender.
I only seek to find out what happened. I trust you do not fear a search.
Not if it's conducted honestly, the colonel said, but his tone made it clear he had no faith in any inquiry Junip might arrange.
Very well, Junip said. I see we have our work cut out for us. For now, I think it's best if we move you to the government compound. I'm assigning a special escort to oversee your safety, and to make sure you don't have any unfortunate encounters with beings who might disrupt our search for the truth. He will be my representative in my absence, and any questions or requests can be delivered to him. I hope, quite frankly, to see you as little as possible from this point forward.
With a theatrical flourish, Junip turned and strode out of the room, his cape billowing behind him. We all looked at one another, not knowing what to expect next. Then, the two peace officers by the door parted and allowed a new being to enter the room. Of the three beings I hated most in the galaxy, I had already had run-ins with two of them. Junip, of course, and Miss Price on the Phatic ship. Here was the third, but this was a being I had never expected to see again, even on Confederation Central. He stood there, tall, muscular, and confident, in a well-tailored Confederation suit, a black Movement for Peace band around one arm. He had a smug look on his handsome face. There was no mistaking his satisfaction. It was Ardov.